Timmy was pacing the marble lobby, sweat beading under his designer suit. He didn't know I was watching, from the glass balcony above, holding the manila folder that would change everything. The man I loved. The man who said, "We're both just hustlers, baby. I got no family to run to," was about to beg for an investment from my parents, the very people he thought were just retired teachers from Cape Town. He never asked, because he was too busy hiding his truth. Now, it was time to meet mine. Buki met Timmy one slow afternoon while she was working as a barista in a small cafe in Johannesburg. He walked in, tired-looking but friendly, wearing a worn-out hoodie and carrying a laptop filled with startup dreams. He ordered a black coffee and told her he was working day and night to build his tech idea from scratch. They started talking, and from that day, he kept coming back, not just for the coffee, but for her. Timmy spoke like someone who understood real struggle. He said he had no support, no rich family, and was just hustling to make it like everyone else. Buki believed him because she respected hard work. She didn't feel the need to share too much about her own life, not because she was hiding anything, but because she wanted someone to like her for who she was, not for where she came from. Their connection grew stronger over time. They didn't go to fancy places or wear expensive clothes. Their dates were simple: long walks, homemade dinners, watching sunsets from cheap rooftop spots, and shopping at thrift stores where they laughed over funny outfits. It felt real, raw, and beautiful. They supported each other's goals and encouraged one another like true partners. To Buki, it seemed like fate. Two people with no shortcuts, just passion, meeting in the middle of their struggle. It felt safe. It felt honest. But little did she know, only one of them was telling the whole truth. Timmy always spoke like someone who had been through a lot. He told Buki that he was an orphan. He said his parents died when he was still very young, and he was raised by an aunt who struggled just to pay rent. He said some nights they slept without food. He painted a picture of hardship so clearly, it was hard not to feel for him. Buki listened with soft eyes and a soft heart, believing every word he said. She understood struggle, not because she had lived it in the same way, but because she had seen it in others. And besides, Timmy didn't look like he was pretending. His words felt real. His pain seemed honest. He told her he had dropped out of college, not because he failed or lacked the brains, but because he had to take care of his little cousin who was very sick. He said the baby needed urgent surgery and there was no one else to help. So he left school and took up small jobs to raise money. Buki was touched. She admired his selflessness. In her eyes, he was a man who had lost so much, but still chose to help others. That made him even more special. Whenever Timmy talked about his past, his voice would get low and serious. He'd shake his head like the memories were too heavy, and Buki never pushed too hard with questions. She didn't want to bring him more pain. She thought it was better to let him open up in his own time. She trusted him. Why wouldn't she? She never thought someone could lie about such personal things. Not about being an orphan, not about saving a sick child. It felt too cruel to even imagine someone making that up. And that's where Timmy had her. He knew how to tell just enough to earn her trust. He knew the kind of details that would make someone believe him. Looking back, there were signs, small things that didn't always make sense. But Buki ignored them, because when you care for someone, you believe the best in them. And at the time, she was all in. She saw Timmy as strong, brave, and loyal. Someone who had gone through fire, but still came out kind. But behind that carefully told story, there was a truth he never shared. A truth that would shake everything she thought they had. At first, Buki didn't notice anything strange. Timmy seemed like a normal guy, with big dreams and a difficult past. But slowly, small things began to stand out. Like his shoes, they were always new. Not just clean, but fresh from the box. Buki thought maybe he saved up for them. Or maybe he had a friend who gave him good deals. She didn't ask. She didn't want to seem like she was questioning his struggle. Then, there was the time he posted a photo from an airplane, in business class. When she asked about it, he smiled and said, "A client gifted me the seat. I guess my pitch really moved him." Buki laughed with him. It sounded like something that could happen. After all, he said he was working on a startup. Maybe someone believed in him. Maybe he got lucky. She wanted to believe it. And so she did. But more signs kept showing up. Every time she invited him to her small flat, he refused. He always had a reason. He'd say things like, "Your space is too peaceful for someone like me. My world is messy. I don't want to bring that into your life." Buki found his words deep, almost poetic. It sounded like he was protecting her from something painful. It made her heart ache for him. She didn't know that this was part of his act, lines he had repeated before to keep distance, to keep control. He preferred they meet in public places or at her favorite cafe. Never his place, never hers. And whenever she asked to know more about his daily life, he would change the topic or joke about how boring his routine was. Buki thought maybe he was just private. Some people are like that. Some people carry so much pain that they hide behind charm. But something about it didn't sit right. She started to feel like she knew only one version of him, the one he chose to show her. He always looked sharp. He never really seemed tired like someone struggling to survive. And he always had the right words at the right time. Still, Buki pushed her doubts aside. She told herself that love required trust. She reminded herself of the story he shared, the orphan, the sick cousin, the hard life, and she held on to the belief that maybe, just maybe, he was telling the truth. But the signs were there, quietly pointing to a man who wasn't being fully honest. A man who had practiced his image so well that even someone as smart as Buki got swept into it. She didn't know yet, but this was just the beginning of the truth unfolding. One evening, Buki was at Timmy's apartment for the first time. He had finally agreed to let her visit after much convincing. They had ordered takeout, watched a movie, and laughed like everything was normal. After dinner, Timmy said he was going to take a quick shower. He left his phone on the couch beside Buki, not thinking much of it. Buki wasn't the type to snoop, and Timmy trusted that. Or maybe he had gotten too comfortable. As the sound of water ran from the bathroom, the phone suddenly lit up. Buki glanced at it casually, but what she saw made her blink twice. The screen showed 6 missed calls, all from the same person. Mom. Her heart paused for a second. Timmy always said he was an orphan. He had repeated that story many times. Buki stared at the name on the screen, trying to make sense of it. Then the phone started ringing again. This time, out of instinct, she picked it up. Maybe it was an emergency. Maybe someone was in trouble. She answered quietly, unsure of what to expect. But what she heard on the other end changed everything. A woman's voice, calm and well-spoken, said, "Timmy, are you still meeting the ambassador with your father tomorrow? He said you haven't replied to his messages." Buki didn't respond. She couldn't. Her mouth was open, but no words came out. The woman on the line kept speaking, unaware that it wasn't Timmy who had answered. "Your father doesn't want to be late. You know how these things are. He said the ambassador's team will be there at 10. Buki slowly ended the call. Her hand was shaking. Her mind was spinning. Father, ambassador, mother. Nothing made sense anymore. She sat there in silence, staring at the phone like it had just spoken a different language. The man who told her he had no family, who said he was raised by a struggling aunt, who claimed he dropped out of school to help a sick cousin, had just been exposed with one simple call. But Buki didn't confront him. Not yet. She smiled when he came out of the shower. She acted normal. She laughed at his jokes. But inside her, something had shifted. Her heart wasn't light anymore. It was heavy with questions, with doubt, with truth she wasn't ready to speak. She decided to wait, to watch, to see how deep the lies really went. Because now, she knew for sure, the man she loved was hiding a whole life from her. 2 weeks passed after that strange phone call, and Buki still hadn't said a word to Timmy about what she had heard. She kept her calm, smiled when needed, and acted as if nothing had changed. But deep down, she was watching everything more closely. The doubt in her heart had grown stronger. She knew something was off, and now she needed to be sure. She was waiting for the right moment to see the truth for herself. Then one evening, Timmy came to her with excitement in his eyes. He said he had big news. He told her that he had been selected to pitch his startup idea to 2 powerful investors from South Africa. He said they were extremely private and rich beyond anything she could imagine. "Old money," he whispered with a grin, as if he had just found a golden ticket. He said this meeting could change his life forever. He talked about how these investors didn't usually meet young entrepreneurs, but someone had recommended him. He was nervous, but also confident. Buki listened quietly, nodding along. She didn't show any emotion, but inside, she knew something he didn't. You see, Buki had already spoken to her parents. The same parents Timmy believed were retired teachers living a quiet life, but that was only part of the story. In truth, Buki came from wealth, the kind of quiet old wealth that never needed to brag. Her parents were well known in elite business circles, but they kept a low profile on purpose. They believed in humility and hard work, which is why Buki never led with her background. After the phone call with Timi's mother, Buki had done her own research. She found out more about Timi's real family and the lies he had told. And when she heard him speak so confidently about this once-in-a-lifetime investor dinner, she didn't stop him. In fact, she encouraged him to go all in. She told him to prepare well, dress nicely, and impress the investors. What Timi didn't know was that Buki had already arranged the dinner at her family's estate, and the two private investors he was about to meet, they were her parents. She wasn't planning to embarrass him, but she wanted him to see what truth really looked like. He had lied to her face while chasing wealth and power, not knowing he had been dining with it all along. Now, he would walk into a room where the truth would sit at the head of the table, and Buki would be right there, watching. The night of the investor dinner finally came. Timi arrived early, dressed in a sharp, custom-made suit. He looked proud, confident, like a man ready to step into greatness. He had spent the last few days perfecting his pitch, practicing every word in the mirror. This was it, his big moment, the chance to impress powerful investors who could change his future forever. He walked into the beautiful dining hall, a quiet, elegant space with soft lighting and rich decor. Everything about the place screamed money, but in a calm, quiet way, the kind of wealth that doesn't have to prove itself. Timi smiled to himself. He believed he belonged there now. What he didn't notice was that Buki was already inside, seated beside the two mystery investors. She looked calm, collected, dressed in a graceful yet simple outfit. She said nothing as Timi entered. She just watched. Timi didn't recognize her parents at first. He had never seen them before, at least not in a setting like this. To him, they were just two serious-looking people sitting with papers and wine glasses in front of them. He nodded politely at them, waiting for the meeting to begin. Then, the hostess walked in and spoke clearly, her voice echoing slightly in the quiet room. "Good evening, everyone. Tonight's pitch will be presented by Ms. Buki Omolade," and Mr. and Mrs. Omolade. Timi froze. His smile faded. He looked at the hostess, then at the couple sitting at the table. Then his eyes moved to Buki, who was looking right at him. His mouth opened, but no words came out. His hands began to shake slightly. He didn't understand. He didn't want to understand. Mr. and Mrs. Omolade, her parents, Buki. Buki was the daughter of the investors. It hit him all at once. The girl he had lied to, the one he told fake stories to, pretending to be poor, pretending to be struggling, was sitting next to the very people he had come to impress. And not just sitting. She was part of it. She belonged there. She was their only child. The room was quiet, but the silence felt loud. Timi's confidence shattered in seconds. He had walked in thinking he was about to change his life, and he had, just not the way he expected. Buki sat back in her chair, calm as ever. She didn't need to shout or explain anything. The truth was sitting right there with her, and now, Timi had to face it. Timi began his pitch with excitement in his voice. He talked about his business idea like it was the next big thing. He used big words, spoke with passion, and tried to look confident. He pointed at slides, explained numbers, and kept glancing at Buki's parents, hoping to impress them. He thought he was doing well. He had no idea what was about to happen. As he continued speaking, Buki sat quietly, holding a folder in her hands. Her face was calm, but her heart was steady with purpose. She had waited long enough. She had given him chances to be honest, but now it was time to show the truth. Right in the middle of his speech, Buki slowly stood up. Timi stopped talking, confused by the sudden movement. Everyone in the room turned to look at her. She didn't say anything at first. She simply placed the folder on the table and opened it. Inside were printed pages, photos, and screenshots. Evidence. She pulled out one paper and read aloud what he had once told her, that he was an orphan, raised by a poor aunt. Then she laid down another document showing his real family background. His father was a wealthy businessman involved in politics. Far from being poor, Timi had grown up in a life of comfort, at least until his family became involved in a scandal. Then came the screenshots. Timi's messages with his friends, laughing at Buki's small apartment, making fun of her clothes, saying how she thought he was poor and innocent, mocking the simple life she lived and how he was just using it as a cover. The room went completely quiet. Timi looked like he couldn't breathe. His eyes widened. His mouth moved, but no sound came out. He didn't know whether to sit or stand. He looked at Buki, searching for mercy in her eyes, but there was none. Buki looked at him, then turned to the room and calmly said, "If you lie for love, you'll lie for funding. This pitch is closed." She didn't raise her voice. She didn't cry. She didn't shout, but her words hit harder than anything else in that room. Her parents nodded silently. They didn't need an explanation. The truth was clear. Timi had fooled many, but he couldn't fool everyone forever. He had come to impress billionaires, but he had been exposed by the one person he thought he had control over, the woman who knew love, but also knew her worth. And in that moment, it was over. After that dinner, the truth about Timi slowly came to light. Everything Buki had suspected was real, and even worse than she imagined. Timi was never poor, not even close. He had grown up in a rich home, with a father who was once a powerful politician. Their family lived in a mansion, owned expensive cars, and sent their kids to the best schools. But it didn't last forever. His father was caught in a big fraud scandal, and everything changed. The media covered it for weeks. His family's name was damaged. Business partners walked away. Friends disappeared. And Timi? He disappeared too, but in a different way. Instead of facing the shame, Timi created a new identity, one that made him look like a victim of life. He told people he had nothing, that he was an orphan, struggling to make it. He thought people would feel sorry for him, help him, support him, and many did, including Buki. He saw Buki as someone quiet and simple. She didn't wear flashy clothes or drive a fancy car. She worked in a cafe. She lived in a small flat. To Timi, she seemed like a safe choice. He believed she would never question him, that she would accept everything he said without doubt. He thought she was too ordinary to ever be a threat. But what he didn't know was that Buki was far from ordinary. Buki didn't show off her life, but she had power behind her silence. She came from a family that had built their success with integrity and hard work. Her parents were not just rich, they were respected, and Buki herself was smart, strong, and deeply observant. She had been raised with values, but also with vision. While Timi was using lies to build a fake future, Buki was already part of a real legacy. She didn't need to prove anything to anyone, because her actions spoke louder than any story. She was quiet, yes, but not weak, not small. She was what many people didn't see coming, the empire that moves without noise. Timi had used Buki's love to try and fix his broken image. He thought she was just a girl who made coffee and smiled kindly, but she was the girl who could expose everything with one folder and one sentence. He didn't just lie to her, he underestimated her, and that was his biggest mistake. After everything came out, Buki had a choice. She could have gone online, told the world about Timi's lies, and destroyed his name in public. She had enough proof to make him a laughingstock. But Buki didn't want drama. She wasn't looking for revenge. She wanted justice, and she wanted to do it the right way. Instead of shouting, she started working quietly behind the scenes. She found out that Timi had lied to more people, not just her. He had taken money from small investors, promising them big returns from his startup, which didn't even exist properly. It was just a name on paper, a shell company with no real business behind it. Many people had trusted him. Some even gave their savings, hoping to be part of something big. But Timi used their money for his lifestyle: suits, flights, gifts, and empty promises. Buki felt responsible, not because it was her fault, but because she had been close to him. She knew now that the best way to make things right was to help the ones he had hurt. She went to her family's legal firm and gathered a team. Together, they collected every complaint, every message, every bank transfer. They built a strong case. Soon, official letters were sent. Legal actions were filed. The shell company that Timi used was exposed for what it really was: a scam. People who had lost money were contacted. Some got help filing for refunds. Others were advised on how to block him from touching their accounts again. Slowly, things started moving in the right direction. But Buki didn't stop there. She also wrote a letter to Timi's real parents. It was not a letter filled with anger. It was respectful, but honest. She told them what he had done, who he had become, and how many people he had fooled. She didn't send it to embarrass them. She sent it because they deserved to know, not just as parents, but as people who once raised a boy with everything and now had to face the truth of who he had become. For Buki, this was not about revenge. It was about responsibility. It was about standing up for the quiet victims, the people who lost money time, and trust. She didn't need to scream to be heard. She knew her actions were enough. In silence, she moved mountains. And while Timmy still tried to fix his image, Buki was already ahead, helping others, healing wounds, and closing the chapter with grace. 6 months had passed since that unforgettable night. A lot had changed, but Buki remained the same, calm, focused, and full of quiet strength. Her actions had helped people heal. Her truth had spoken louder than any lie. And now, she was being recognized not for what she wore or who her parents were, but for who she had become on her own. The African Women in Business Summit was one of the biggest events of the year. Leaders, investors, and entrepreneurs from across the continent were present. When Buki's name was announced, the room filled with applause. She walked on stage wearing a simple black power suit. No loud colors, no fancy designer tags, just confidence, peace, and purpose. Her walk was steady. Her face was calm. She didn't need to pretend to be anything. She was enough, just as she was. Her parents sat in the front row, watching her with pride in their eyes. They didn't clap the loudest, but they smiled the deepest. They had raised her well, not with pride in wealth, but pride in character. And now, everyone in that room was about to see that. Buki began her speech by sharing her journey, not just the victories, but the mistakes, the heartbreak, and the lessons. She spoke softly, but every word landed like truth. She talked about trust, about silence, about paying attention to the small signs. She never mentioned Timmy's name. She didn't need to. The lesson was bigger than one person. As she came to the end of her speech, she paused. Then she looked at the crowd and said, "Never be ashamed of where you come from, but be twice as careful of those who lie about where they came from just to fit into your story." The room went quiet for a moment, the kind of silence that meant everyone was listening, really listening. Then the applause began. In the back row, someone was sitting alone, watching, still, quiet. It was Timmy. He didn't clap. He didn't smile. He didn't speak. He just watched the woman he once thought was average, now standing on a stage he could never reach. He was no longer part of her story. She had moved on, and he was just silent, forgotten. If this story moved you, don't just scroll. Drop a Buki 1 in the comments if you believe silent strength is the loudest power. Like if you've ever been underestimated. Share this with someone who needs a reminder. You don't have to shout to be powerful. Tag a queen who carries her grace like armor. Because sometimes the real clap back is success in silence.